Hello everybody! Metal and Mecha versions of Sonic and Friends have been terrorizing our heroes since day 2, mimicking not just the main cast's appearance, but even some of their unique abilities. And while many of them have proven to be a real threat, some of their designs may be hiding an even more dangerous secret that could make these true technological terrors. So, are they just mechanized clones? Or full-on replacements? And what deeper purpose might Robotnik have created them for? Welcome back to Loops and Lore. I'm Ben, and today we are going to be taking a look under the hood of these robotic replicas to see if we can figure out what Eggman's got cooking under that tech-tight cowling. To start off, we need to establish where Metal and Mechas fit into the hierarchy of badniks. While they are built by Robotnik, they are manufactured to a much higher standard and may even be hand-built by the Eggman himself, rather than mass-produced like many of his other robots and machines. Most badniks don't have a great deal of processing power, and while they can prove to be dangerous, they're more of a threat to Sonic as a group or alongside other environmental hazards, such as traps, pits, spikes, crushers, and worst of all, water. Mechas and metals are, on the other hand, not just more durable than a standard badnik, but far more intelligent as well, with both Metal Sonic and Mecha Mark II developing their own in-the-moment strategies and entire schemes. This level of combat ability is one of the reasons why Robotnik continues to repair and relaunch them. One other thing that is surprisingly different about these carbon copies is the fact that they are powered very differently from the rest of Robotnik's designs. Now, most badniks have been powered by flickies or plant life, leading all the way up to the E1000 series that we see appear in Sonic Heroes. And we've already touched on why this change may have been made, but mechas and metals, like many other boss tier enemies, do not release a flicky when destroyed. Though that doesn't mean that they couldn't use one. Eggman would later use wisps in a very similar way to flickies, and Metal Sonic was able to be modified to run off this energy with only a few simple modifications. Mecha Mark II is also capable of running off alternative energy sources, even being able to store some of the Master Emerald's energy in order to obtain a temporary super form during his final face-off with Knuckles in Sky Sanctuary Zone. All of this is to say that these two lines, mechas and metals, are far superior to a normal badnik in terms of durability, combat effectiveness, and intelligence, being able to even exceed the potential of some of Robotnik's other boss-level machines and be further modified for specific mission needs. Now that we have a basic understanding of these machines, let's explore them individually and see what else we can uncover. Following the current narrative, our first encounter with a Chromium clone is this blue crony right here, Metal Sonic. Now, we've already mentioned him a couple of times, and that's for good reason. Metal is the only known unit still in Eggman's service, seen operating most recently in the IDW comics and offshoot racing titles. Metal is also the one we have the most data on, as he serves as our primary enemy alongside Robotnik in his introductory game, having more appearances in a single game than any of the others. Metal has a wide variety of abilities. Besides the incredible feat of being able to keep pace with Sonic, he can also generate a field of electricity or surround himself in flame. These might sound like passive abilities at first, but Metal uses them more as a battering ram than an actual shield. Since his entire frame could be weak to Sonic's spin attack, he uses these abilities to render himself temporarily untouchable so that he can attempt to destroy Sonic. Metal's abilities vary from one game to another, but in Sonic Heroes, he not only takes on a more modernized form, but reveals that he now has the ability to turn into liquefied metal and copy the lifeform data from those he fights. Except, unlike other fictional robots with a similar ability, Metal can copy more than just a voice, physical appearance or simple shapes, but also complex mechanical parts as well. He's even able to copy Chaos's abilities in order to transform himself into a kit-bashed dragon, but also able to use Chaos control. Except Metal Overlord's Chaos control powers don't just stop at moving through space and time. He can sense and avoid this power being used on him as well. Something no other creature has done since, mechanical or otherwise. Of course, all that is possible because he attempts to overthrow Ivo and rule the Eggman Empire himself. Kind of. Metal Sonic later seems to retain loyalty to Eggman, and that's because he never fully broke it. Metal is programmed to be a robotic replica of Sonic, right down to his blue exterior and speed. What Robotnik was probably not counting on was Metal developing a sort of personality disorder where he, to some extent, believes he is Sonic, or at least wishes to replace him. In Sonic CD, holograms are projected showing Metal Sonic stopping on flickies, and these are scattered all over Little Planet. The small animals only return to the level once Sonic has destroyed the holograms, making it seem as if Eggman may have been framing Sonic in order to scare off the other animals or turn them against him. And Metal Sonic is really leaning into this part, going so far as to kidnap Amy in Collision Chaos and wave his finger at us before the start of the race in Stardust Speedway. Even the fact that this is a battle race and not just a straight up fist fight like all the other mecha battles goes to show just how much Metal is determined to be a better version of Sonic, though nothing highlights this better than during the end of the fight with Metal Overlord. As Metal is defeated and begins to fall from his position of power, he refuses to accept the outcome of this battle, declaring that he is Sonic, the real Sonic. It seems that, in an attempt to create a copy of Sonic, Robotnik went a step too far, trying to copy not just Sonic's speed and color, but his ego as well. This deep desire to be recognized as faster and better than Sonic, to the point where he can replace him, is what allows Metal's programming to inadvertently create a loophole where he shelves his master in order to gain enough power to defeat Sonic. Only, of course, to return loyalty to Eggman once he is beaten back to a humbled factory reset. Later, in Sonic Colors Rise of the Wisps, Metal is able to use Wisp powers as well, despite never being explicitly programmed to do so. There's also a scene in the opening of Sonic the Fighters where Metal has a different armor set that allows him to transform into a spacefaring rocket, meaning that he can adapt to nearly any situation or available power source in an attempt to claim the crown of the fastest thing alive. Mecha Sonic, on the other hand, is built with the same basic intention of designing a machine that can beat Sonic at his own game, though a very different play style. Whereas Metal is purpose-built for speed, Mecha is the brute force method. Making his first appearance in the 16-bit version of Sonic 2, Mecha starts off looking like a rejected member of the Burger King Kids Club kids. He has a lightweight frame with a mono eye visor, spines, rocket boosters, and simple claw hands. While he can make quick thrust-assisted movements and attempt to grab Sonic with his extending arms, his main move is imitating the spin jump. However, his spines aren't sharp enough to outdo Sonic's own quills, and so the two simply bounce off of each other. In the Genesis version of Sonic 2, Mecha returns fully armored and ready for a long fight. His eye visor is reworked, and his spines are now a buzzsaw that is so sharp Sonic has to avoid them even when they aren't in motion, making Mecha completely invulnerable and deadly when curled into a spinball. He also has wheels and a full suspension attached to the back of his feet, as well as a jetpack on his back to allow for quick dashes across the floor of the Death Egg and probably any other terrain as well. Lastly, Mecha can shoot spikes out in midair, giving him melee and projectile attacks that make this one of the most difficult fights in the series. Though defeated, Mecha gets his revenge as Mark II in Sonic 3, where he gets completely retooled. This terrifying version has a fresh coat of blue paint and a whole new moveset. While still better armored than Metal, this version is lighter than Mark I for faster combat, striking a balance between power and endurance. Mark II is able to use most of the same moves as before, spin attacks and jumps, as well as dashing along the ground, though its spines are now even sharper than before, and in spin mode, it can saw straight through the armor of the Eggmobile and a seated Robo in just one pass, making his spin attack the most powerful in the game. When we first encounter him, he's operating the Eggmobile and a few of its select attachments with the same proficiency as Robotnik, before getting fed up and deciding to face Sonic head-on. It's here we get a full view of him and see that he looks much more like Sonic than any other copy to date, even when in Spinball form. Making it a possibility that Robotnik was using Mark II similarly to how he first deployed Metal, having him operate in the background to impersonate Sonic and keep Knuckles from catching on. Either way, it's in this moment when we get to fight him face to face that Mark II's resilience is really demonstrated. Unlike Metal Sonic, who blew apart after hitting the wall in Stardust Speedway, and the previous Mark I mechas that both exploded, Mark II simply collapses and starts to short out. Damaged, but not destroyed yet. After part of Sky Sanctuary collapses around it, we would assume Mecha was done, or at least left in a state that would require Robotnik to repurpose him for the next game. But no, he survives. And when Knuckles fights him after, Mecha doesn't even appear damaged, and after Knuckles knocks some sense into him, he once again doesn't break or burst, but prepares to double down instead, robbing the Master Emerald of a piece of its power over and over and over again, gaining a limited super form each time. This highlights just how threatening Mark II's potential is. When Supersonic arrives in Angel Island, Knuckles knocks him back to normal and separates Sonic's hold on the Emerald. Here, Knuckles has all he can do to avoid this Super Psycho, only able to briefly strike between transformations. And that, right there, as Mark II is standing on the Sacred Master Emerald, drawing in a bit of its power, is the moment we see just how terrifying Mark II really is. When Mark II stands disrespectfully on top of the Master Emerald, we see him open up to reveal his core, a gem-like object that looks like a robotic eye. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but during this charge-up sequence, Mecha's chest opens and his head cocks backwards. Younger me mistook this as Mecha looking up as he drank in the energy of the Master Emerald. But no. His head and chest are opening as a two-piece hatch, and the orange glow we see from his eye and chest when closed are both coming from this same gem. This gem can also discharge the energy in the form of a projectile attack. Now again, robotic eye, maybe. Some kind of strange gem made by Eggman, or both? Perhaps. But either way, it can be assumed that this is Mark II's core, and the basis for the next part of our discussion. Remember how earlier we discussed that most boss level opponents are not powered by a flicky? Well, while flickies appear to be a good source of power, they themselves are a bit limited, and so naturally, this is why they are primarily used in robots that aren't valuable, not including the E10 and E100 series, which are still powered by flickies but seem to be far more efficient in their power consumption compared to a regular Badnik. In Sonic Superstars, Robotnik is attempting to capture flickies that have grown to massive proportions thanks to the island's equally massive food. These flickies are captured and used in some boss battles that are next level in terms of their difficulty, in part because of all the life energy these robots are able to draw from. Though these robots may not be as efficient as Gamma or the egg robo that tortures Knuckles for an entire game, but they are able to use all of that raw energy for tremendous combat potential. Now, if one of Robotnik's creations could achieve these levels of power on a flicky, giant or otherwise, what might they be capable of if they used something else? Again, we aren't really quite sure what exactly Mecha's core is, only that it acts as a way to absorb, store, and release large amounts of energy at will. So large that the robot could achieve a super form. So, what would happen if we used something even more powerful? And before we continue with that idea, we have to add one more layer. It isn't clear if the core is merely a battery or Mecha's metal mind, his central processing unit, his brain. In a previous conversation about Gamma, I suggested that the Badnik sort of hijacks the Flicky's body, and we could argue its mind as well. Using some basic built-in computer chips and software, you could program the robot to keep its power source under control, using it to both operate and power the machine. Different than Metal Sonic, who has several processing chips on board and operates without a flicky or any other known power source, unlike Mark II, who absolutely has some kind of a core at his center. But if this is both his power core and brain, as some have suggested, we can't just replace it with a chaos remote for power because, well, then the robot would move erratically without any brain activity there to control where that power is going and what it's using it for. So we'd have to find something else to control the robot. Something with a bit more intelligence. While on the island, Sonic and Tails run into a beaten down Mecha who is giving some major Mega Man 02 vibes. This broken down old robot decides to use an old piece of egg tech to try and switch his mind with that of Sonic. A flashback shown in the comic illustrates Robotnik trying to use some sort of mind interface to control another Badnik with apparently lackluster success. Given how persistent Ivo is, for him to build this device and give up meant it probably hit limited success or just limited use, but otherwise appears to have reached a stage that was fully functioning and usable. And now, Mecha intends to use it to fully transfer his consciousness to Sonic. But why would he think to do this? It's been suggested that it's Mecha Sonic and not Egg Robo that is at the center of our second adventure on Angel Island. And based on Metal Sonic's ability to develop an entire scheme to take over the world, it's possible that Mecha also has a high level of intelligence, at least when compared to a standard Badnik. But this isn't just a game of moving the right pieces into the right places. No, this scheme is totally different. But what this does tell us is that whatever is at Mecha Sonic's core is more than just programming, because he isn't just trying to reprogram Sonic's mind to think that it's Mecha, but to actually subvert Sonic's consciousness with his own. And it's almost successful. Part of the process does take hold, at least temporarily, as we see Sonic crying with tears not his own, but Mecha's, near the end of the story when Mecha is reunited with his friends. One of the known mandates that Sega has placed on the IDW comics and its writers is that Sonic is not permitted to cry. They get around this rule here by making sure we, the audience, know it is only because of this momentary link between the mechanized Hedgehog and the organic one. Still, this proves a few things. One, that the technology for organic minds to control machines, like we previously thought of the Flickies, is in fact possible, and two, that Mecha isn't entirely programming. He does have some sort of consciousness, possibly contained within the eye-like gem. But what does all of this really imply? If Robotnik was able to use the mind and energy of organic life to power his machines, and if Metal Sonic's frame was compatible with the Emerald energy, it's entirely possible that he could interface with Sonic directly in the same way a Badnik would a regular Flicky. Following this logic, we could assume that the reason Mecha decided to run this in reverse was because his body was too damaged and incorrectly reassembled to match its original potential. If this is correct, it would mean that Robotnik was designing mech variants of Sonic and his friends not just to replace the main cast, but to enslave them and their abilities to work for him. Looking at the size of Mecha Sonic, it's not hard to imagine that we could stuff Sonic inside there, especially if we rolled him up into a little spin ball in the area where that gem is. Yeah, that's one heck of a spring trap. The scary thing about this, though, is if true, it would mean that just like what we saw with Gamma, where she gained partial access to her memories as a Flicky while still in the machine, Sonic and his friends would also start to become aware of what they were involved in, forced to watch as Robotnik uses them as a power source for all his evil and acting as his hands of destruction against their will. Thankfully, Mecha appears to have evolved from his encounter with Sonic here and will likely live out a peaceful life there on the island of Mr. Robots. We hope. So, I guess this is where this whole theory would end, right? Well, perhaps, but there is still just one more thing. There could be a moment in the future where Sonic needs the aid of a rival, now friend, who can lend him a set of abilities, similar to his own, but with a form able to operate in conditions that Sonic's body couldn't normally survive or easily operate in. Of course, at the cost that the longer he is in the suit, the harder it will be to get out. And with that, I'm Ben. This has been Loops and Lore. Thanks for watching.